everybody, and welcome to Subjectively Correct, a movie podcast involving myself, Josh, and my movie friend and partner in crime, Matt.
Hello.
We are a couple of movie buffs or enthusiasts who have very different opinions on things at times, and other times we agree completely, I think. And so we thought we might try making a little podcast where we compare movies with each other and have a discussion about them and see why we agree and or disagree.
Exactly. And then eventually we will fight to the death too. That will come later.
Yeah. That'll finish up the whole thing and it's all over after that.
Yeah.
But it's kind of why we called it Subjectively Correct, because obviously we think a lot of movie opinions are very subjective. There are objective elements I think we'd agree on, but ultimately at the end of the day, your enjoyment will vary, and no matter how subjective it is to you or why you think you enjoy something, it might feel very correct and accurate because that's your honest opinion. And that's how I feel, even though I appreciate that my opinions are subjective, I still think they're correct, because otherwise I wouldn't hold them.
Exactly. We are all correct in our opinions.
Yes, and we will argue them and tell each other why we're wrong and right.
Yeah.
So this episode is basically a pilot. We're just trying it out to see how we go. So if you hear another one, it means we liked it and we enjoyed ourselves. So But what we've done is basically each episode we're going to run with a theme. So it could be a genre of movies or a particular type of movie that we can bring to the podcast. And we'll bring a movie each, preferably one that the other has not seen, perhaps. And we'll each watch each other's movie and then get together and have a discussion about why we brought it in the first place, and then the other person what we liked or didn't like about it, and that sort of stuff. And hopefully we'll have some interesting clashes and agreements along the way, because I think there's plenty of chance for both.
For sure, yeah.
So this being the first pilot episode, we decided to bring movies that are significant and important to us, each of us personally. And so we can talk about why this particular movie is important to us and then get into ripping it apart, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to go with the oldest movie first each week, and then, or each month rather. This is probably going to be a monthly thing. And then the newest one after that. So we'll change up who's first and who's not each time. And with that in mind, Matt, the movie that you brought this pilot episode as an important movie to you was 1982's The Thing. Why don't you tell us all about it and introduce the movie first?
Hell yeah.
And why you brought it.
I would love to talk about The Thing because I love talking about this goddamn movie. So the title that I brought to the Subjectively Correct movie discussion club is The Thing from 1982, directed by John Carpenter, who is well known for Halloween and They Live and Escape from New York. The Thing is just another well-known title under his belt, though it means more to me than just the subjective execution. There's personal stuff in here as well. Mm-hmm. The movie stars a handful of people, since it's all so contained, including Kurt Russell, Keith David, Wilford Brimley, and not to forget about Jed the dog, which I will talk about as well in a second. The script is written by Bill Lancaster based on a novella from 1938 titled Who Goes There?, written by John W. Campbell Jr. This isn't even the first movie adaptation of the story, but it's probably the best, at least in my subjective opinion. And the music is composed mainly by Ennio Morricone, who is well known for a bunch of great scores for Western movies, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and Once Upon a Time in the West. And there are additional tracks made by John Carpenter and his longtime collaborator Alan Howarth themselves as well. So why did I bring this movie to this podcast? It is one of my absolute all-time favorites, for sure. And it's definitely one of those kinds of movies that completely sparked the passion in movies for me. I have seen this movie countless times, and it has never lost its shine. In fact, it probably has grown more. The magic has grown stronger each time I've seen this movie. And this has many personal elements because it combines so many things about storytelling that I like a lot, which starts with the very much with the isolated Arctic setting, which is beautifully captured through the cinematography. I love how this very simple US American research station in the Arctic is shown visually. And I love the themes of isolation and paranoia and the terror of the unknown. There's a lot of good things in here. The small-scale cast with genuinely authentic performances by actors with great chemistry that makes a lot about this movie work, which I guess I should summarize the plot of this movie as well, if people don't already know this.
Yeah, go for it.
Through pop culture osmosis. But it's very easy to summarize, honestly. The story is about this isolated Arctic research station where a couple of people pretty much live out their mundane work life, hidden away in the white hell of the Arctic. And their dull everyday life is pretty much interrupted by an invasion of a shape-shifting alien creature, which spawns paranoia among the small group of survivors here. That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what this movie is probably generally most regarded for is the practical effects, which it is famous for. Which The Thing is an incredible assortment of truly creative and incredibly visceral body horror practical effects, which it has aged incredibly well so far in the 40 years of its existence, and I believe it's just gonna age well until the end of existence because it's just so solid and real in a way. I just believe all of this makes for an incredible package. This isn't a perfect movie at all, but I don't think any piece of art is ever perfect. But I do wholeheartedly believe that The Thing is an incredible showcase for what the medium of movie can achieve. And one more thing that I want to mention is the cast is incredible, but including Jet the dog, who I want to give a special shout out to. I just realized recently that Jet the dog also played the titular White Fang in the movie from when was it? I had it somewhere. The Disney movie adaptation from 1991, which is another favorite movie of mine, honestly. And Jet the dog is both in that movie and here in The Thing. And I'm a huge sucker for good animal handling in movies, and I genuinely believe that the performance from Jet the dog in this movie, in The Thing, is just as strong as the human performances, because the way he is handled and led through the scenes as basically like the patient zero of this story, it genuinely feels like an alien trying to imitate a dog crawling around this Arctic research station. I believe it in every scene. And I think it's one of the strongest animal performances I've seen in a movie. But having said all of that, here's what I think, what I might expect from your opinion. I'm gonna expect, I think you're gonna appreciate the practical effects. I think you're gonna appreciate the the slow atmosphere. But I know you aren't generally a big fan of the horror genre, and this is a very visceral horror story. So I'm really, really interested to hear how these two sides probably come together for you.
Yeah, well, I, as you mentioned, I didn't go into this completely blind, even though I haven't watched it before. But I have, especially while watching it, I noticed, oh yes, I've seen these scenes before in just, around the place as you do, because of the practical effects and how I think classic and well regarded they are. I've seen certain scenes where there's like bodies morphing and stuff that on other things where they're talking about special effects essentially in movies. And just on that, I would say after watching the film, for me, that's pretty much my favorite part of the whole film was all the practical special effects, because I'm a big fan of practical effects in general over, computer graphics or visual CGI, VFX kind of stuff. That's all cool, but give me an actual practical effect and I'll believe it way more every time.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think this is the same. And you're right, like I can see why this is such a classic for practical effects, because the special effects in it are just top notch, like amazing. I was really pleased to see it for that reason, because yes, it's all body horror, gross stuff, but they did it really well. And, and it was even though it is as old as I am, because I was born in 1982. So, this old film still stands up in the same way that I think other films it reminded me of films like Alien, or even the effects in Star Wars and that sort of stuff, where they had actual models or actual puppets and things. And I always think that sort of stuff holds up way longer than, CG ages very quickly. And
yeah, for sure.
Even the best CG in 10 years' time is going to look kind of crap just because. But so I really enjoyed that part of it. That was definitely the highlight of watching this film. And overall, though, I really did enjoy it. And for me, it's not necessarily a 5-star movie, but it's like a 4.5. So, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I didn't quite get there for me. But I agree. I really enjoyed the storytelling. I liked the whole isolation of it and the oppression of like the weather and the location and the environmental storytelling, and how they are very much stuck there with no option, because that's kind of hard situation to create a lot of the time in a believable way, I think.
Yeah.
If it's like, oh, I'm stuck in my house in suburbia, it's like, yeah, whatever. You've got places you could go. But but this is like literally, it reminded me a lot of the first Alien film, especially in the beginning, because I even took a note saying like 25 minutes in and nothing's really happened, in a good way.
Yeah.
Because it's very much like the opening scenes of Alien, where they're showing you the environment and they're showing you how these people live, and it's all very kind of mundane in a way, like even though it's sci-fi eventually and all this kind of stuff, they're normal. They're playing pool, they're eating their food, they're just reading books, they're hanging out, listening to music, doing normal shit. And
exactly,
that kind of is a really nice place to start off with as a foundation, to then get crazy and unsettling and paranoia, mystery, violent, gross alien stuff. So I really enjoyed that. And most of my interest in films in general is to do with storytelling and different ways of telling stories. And so that's why I think I really liked The Thing in general, even though I'm not the biggest horror fan. But this kind of horror isn't the kind that really is going to keep me up at night anyway. I don't know why. There's some quote-unquote horror genre films that don't bother me, and then there's others that just freak me out and I never forget. So films like this, and like Alien is another example, just not to keep bringing it up, but it keeps reminding me of it. Alien I love as well, and it doesn't bother me as far as a horror film kind of goes.
If I may, I have a question about that actually.
Yeah.
Since you're talking about like the type of horror that actually gets to you and the type of horror that doesn't, is it maybe that The horror that gets to you is more grounded and realistic, and this was a bit too far out for actually getting to you.
Yeah, I think so, because, I mean, it doesn't have to be, like, realistic, because even that, like, I've watched Friday the 13th and stuff, and that didn't bother me as far as getting scared or whatever. I grew up watching, like, Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff when they were coming out. They were scary, don't get me wrong, but they didn't, put me off watching them, kind of thing. Whereas films like the one I always think of is I Am Legend with Will Smith, like the newer Omega Man version of the film. There are some scenes in that which just freak me out big time. Those kind of creepy, unexpected things. Like, have you seen I Am Legend?
I have seen it, yeah.
So, just as one pure example, the freakiest part of that movie to me, and it even kind of gives me the willies thinking about it now, is the part where he's driving through the city, and obviously he's on his own during the day and it's isolated and whatever. But he sees the mannequin that he talks to in the shop in the middle of the street and basically goes insane because he's like, how is this happening? And he freaks out. That freaked me out big time. I don't know why, but that just got to me. And then the fact that he gets, trapped by the bad guys and the monsters and all that, and it shows that they're intelligent and, setting him up and all that kind of stuff. For some reason, that just got to me big time. And
it's interesting.
Freaked the shit out of me. Whereas, coming back to the thing, like gross body horror stuff that's, dudes turning inside out and splitting apart and things, like, nah, it's all good.
Okay. Because I was sitting here rewatching that movie and seeing all those genuinely gnarly like effects, and I was thinking, okay, maybe this wasn't like the perfect recommendation for somebody who doesn't like horror. This could be a bit much, but I guess it worked out.
But then I think maybe it's the sci-fi element as well, because again, I really like the Alien movies, and I still get like jump scared or whatever. It's not like I don't find it. It doesn't get my adrenaline pumping or something, but it's the difference between the reason I don't watch certain horror movies is because I don't want to be kept up all night, being a scaredy cat for a week or something while I'm having nightmares and things. So I like horror films as much as anything else, but certain types I know are going to get to me and get under my skin and really kind of hang with me and bother me for a while. So I kind of avoid that because that's not fun.
Right, yeah.
But
understandable.
But speaking of this one as well, I really appreciated how much of this movie is kind of a classic of the genre as well. Like, there's obviously, watching it now 30, 40 years later, you can see where it's inspired other films and certain elements that other people have copied or used or, taken on. And that's always refreshing as well. Like, I like seeing kind of the origins of tropes or whatever. And I'm being generous to this film. They might be copying stuff as well, but as far as I know, this is the earliest I've seen a lot of those things. So, but that also brings me down to, I think, what was probably the one thing that didn't quite gel with me about the movie, and that was it was partly to do with the 1980s style of storytelling, where they do take it slow. They do spend lots of time just letting things happen and keeping it very simple and straightforward and, not trying to be too clever. Like, I think a lot of modern films get caught up their own ass trying to be really clever. Whereas films like Alien or The Thing now as well, they're happy to take their time. They're happy to spend half an hour at the beginning of the movie just kind of showing you where you are and what's happening. But the downside to that was, as they built all that kind of tension and paranoia and stuff throughout the film, I kept there watching it going, oh, I'm looking out for different things and I'm watching who's touching who, because it's, maybe they're going to become a doppelganger or something, and who's missing at times and who's not accounted for, and could they have been infected or, I'm like trying to keep track of all this stuff and hold on to the mystery kind of thing. And so it was a little bit disappointing to get to the end where it never actually got as complex as I was making it.
Sure, yeah, okay.
And I know that's
interesting.
It's kind of a double-edged sword in that sense, because I really like that it's very straightforward and simple, and doesn't try to be too fancy. It just kind of tells it quite honestly, I think, even though it's a highly fictional film. But it's an honest kind of take on that sort of thing. Whereas in my own head, I'm like, I've got this whole mystery going on and there's all this double crossing and stuff happening and oh, that's not a real dude. That's not a real dude, but maybe that guy is. And, but then it's like, no, it's pretty much what you saw on the surface is kind of what you'd expect. Like, even down to like the first dude who is like the dog guy who takes care of the dogs at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I suspected him right from the start because I kind of knew what the film was about anyway when I went in. So
yeah.
I knew there were doppelgangers and stuff. So I initially suspected him all the way through, right up to the end. And then it got revealed, oh, yes, I am. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. So that was the only thing that didn't really, hit the nail on the head for me, which kind of stopped it being spectacular in my world of movies. But having said that, everything else was fantastic, and I'm really glad I got to watch it because, like I say, those special effects are just amazing, and I would recommend everyone check them out just because see what you can do without computers. It's just very cool. And I think there's something in our human brains when we watch films or anything really, when we look at things, that we can kind of tell what's real and what's not, even if we can't articulate it at the time. And it's that uncanny valley kind of thing as well, where even when we see really good CGI, we can go, wow, that's amazing, like the new Avatar films or whatever. Amazing CGI, amazing animation, but we know it's not real.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas the monsters in this and like even the little like the head that turns into a spider and runs off. And
hell yeah. I love that so much.
But they've actually done it for real. So even if it looks a little bit goofy, even like the movement's a bit janky perhaps here and there, you can forgive it because it's actually happening either way.
Yeah, it's a real physical thing in the world. It's there, yeah.
So it's not like they got it wrong. It's just that's the limitation of what they're doing. Right?
Yeah.
But it actually did move like that because it literally did.
Yes. That whole defibrillator scene, though, that whole sequence is probably in my top 5 favorite movie scenes of all time. It's incredible.
Well, that is probably one of the 2 scenes that I had seen before watching the movie because I think because it is so incredible.
Yeah.
But watching it in context was even better again because, you get all the lead up and everything. But yeah. It's a fantastic bit of special effects, and the people who worked on it are obviously just amazing and really did a fantastic job. So yeah, I'm glad to have finally seen it. This has been on my watch list for a long time because it is such a classic. But yeah, I agree with you as well on the dog. Some of those shots, especially early on.
Hell yeah.
Where he's just wandering around the facility.
Yeah.
And just going down the corridor and looking around. And you can tell that there's a handler like talking to him. But that's okay.
For sure, but I actually think it works in the favor of it. Like, you can tell it's not the natural behavior, but it works since it is not supposed to be a normal dog. So it works perfectly. Yeah.
And all that stuff is just, great. And I even, to this, I was going to say to this day, I watched it earlier today. So even right now, when I think about it, that very first kind of instance where the tentacles and stuff will start coming out of the dog, and flying around and stuff, they shot it in such a way that I can't actually quite 100% put my finger on how they did that as a special effect, because I can think of it like obviously there's wires and things and but because of the way they shot it, it's not 100% obvious. Like they keep it confusing enough that all you see like tentacles flailing around and you're like, whoa, that's intense. And maybe on subsequent on viewings you might pick up on more things, but initially it's just very well shot and put together and edited so that it feels kind of a bit confusing, which makes it more real in a way.
It's also, I think, what adds a lot to these sequences is that the props oftentimes basically, like, they genuinely rip apart and are destroyed after the act. So it's not even just trickery. They genuinely break during the scene.
Well, and there's real fluids involved and that sort of stuff. So things are splashing and burning and, for real.
Oh, yeah.
which is just phenomenal. And well, and there's a I think it's just before the autopsy scene, maybe, but there's one part where someone's head basically melts, and I know it's done by like wax melting, and they made like a fake head out of wax and then basically heated it and melted it. And even just that kind of process of doing an effect is fascinating to me because it's so effective, but even it kind of defies disbelief in a way. Like, it's fake, it's melting wax, it's, synthetic materials and it's all set up and made and everything. But because it is a real thing that's actually happening, it's very easy to believe and just let yourself go with it. And, which I think is the complete opposite to, say, CG, because it's fake, it's computer graphics, so you're picking it apart and you're going, well, that's not 100% real, or that's not quite a good animation. So you're even harder on it, I think. Well, I think I am, definitely. And I'm even more critical of the amazing computer graphics that people can do, which is probably unfair, but...
Yeah, but you're definitely not the only person that is that way.
Yeah, I think just naturally that's how your brain processes it. Yeah. Whereas if I see like...
Easy to get there.
Like talking about the janky spider movement or whatever, like...
Yeah.
It's real though, so you kind of go, well, that's what it's doing.
Yeah.
So it's easier to believe because it actually is a real thing. So yeah, I could go on about those special effects forever because they really were that good.
Yeah.
and the other thing that didn't really amaze me, I guess, just to put a final thought on it, was perhaps the performances of some of the characters. Not to say any of them were bad. Like, they were all good, but not necessarily very memorable. Like, I found about halfway through, I was having a hard time kind of keeping track of names and who that was. And like, I got the doctor and like the autopsy guy mixed up, and when they're suspecting different people, saying, oh, watch out for that guy, I'm like, oh, I can't quite remember who that is.
Yeah, that's fair, honestly.
And because there's a good number of them to be all there at once, even though it is a contained cast. So it was just a little bit confusing, and I had to play catch up a few times, like, oh, that's who they're talking about. And
that's fair.
Not that it wasn't a huge blemish or anything. It was just something I thought was, it could have been handled a little bit better, or maybe for me anyway, I need something to be a bit more explicit or something than it was. So, but that, like I say, that could be a me thing.
I think that's fair criticism. That's some of the there you can definitely nitpick some of the janky movement of the practical effects, especially that spider when it burns and it shakes violently. I never really liked that. I think that's a bit too over the top. and I think the whole thing with the underground laboratory thing where the guy builds his UFO, that's also if you think a bit about it more than you should, you can easily find some problems there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely not perfect for sure. There's valid criticism.
Yeah, I liked that kind of underground thing as well, even though it felt like, wow, he got all that done that quickly. Like, but
I'm okay with him having dug that thing quickly. I mean, it is a shape-shifting being. Who knows? Maybe it got like some huge shovel hands for that or whatever. I'm curious how he got that like walking bench down there and everything. Did it take it apart and screw it together or whatever? That's more what I'm confused about.
And the tools and everything.
Yeah.
No, definitely. But no, I very much enjoyed it. I'm glad I got to watch it eventually because, as I say, I've wanted to watch it and it did pay off. Because sometimes you watch old classics and you think, yeah, it's old.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really, doesn't really do it for me anymore.
Yeah.
And it's dated and everything. But I think this, like you say, I think it does actually hold up really well. And is just as entertaining and enjoyable and amazing as I'm sure it was at the time.
Yeah, I think so.
So,
all right, I guess it's time to move on to your pick. It's time to go.
The movie I brought as a important movie to me is the movie Go from 1999. And I'm going to preface this with a lot of personal reasons for this. Because I will straight out the bat say that from a technical perspective, this doesn't have like amazing special effects. This doesn't have amazing cinematography or things like that. I think the writing is good personally, but aside from that, I think there's not, and it's well made. I think like it's competent. It does a good job. I find it very entertaining, but I didn't pick it for its technical cinematic prowess. Let's say I picked it because it came out in 1999. That's the year I did year 12 in school, and so I was the same age as some of the main characters, and the characters in the movie very much remind me of my friends and I at the time.
Oh.
And so I could relate very well to a lot of these characters. And the kind of things they're into and that sort of stuff was very familiar to me at the time as well. And it was just like, I think the timing and where I was in my life and all that kind of thing when it came out just was a magical marriage of circumstance. But I have seen many criticisms of this film that are valid, but I don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
Because I love it so much. It's very much a very personal importance for me, I guess, because it's very sentimental and nostalgic in a lot of ways. But what's it all about? So, directed by Doug Liman, who isn't anyone I would necessarily write home about, but he's known for doing Born Identity, Edge of Tomorrow, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, mostly like action films, and this isn't really an action film. But it stars one of my favourite actresses, Sarah Polley, who is a Canadian actress who also went on to become a director and writer of other films. And she does really kind of weird stuff, which I like. It's got Timothy Olyphant, who I really enjoy, who, you know, has become famous in recent years for doing a lot of TV stuff. Like he's one of the leads in Deadwood, which is a TV show I love. And he's also the lead in, what's it called? Justified, which is another kind of Western TV show. Katie Holmes. Yeah, she's Katie Holmes. She's batshit crazy and who cares? Jay Moore, again, classic of the 90s, along with Scott Wolf. They were both big in the 90s, and I think they didn't really do much after that. William Fichtner is one of my favorite actors of all time. I love him to death. And he's one of those guys who always shows up playing supportive roles, but never a lead role. And I just love him every time because he's both hilarious, but also he's got a lot of range. I'll leave it at that. And then the last notable people are Taye Diggs and Nathan Bexton, who, again, I'm not really sure what else they've done other than this. But yeah, they're in it. And Go was written by John August, who wrote a movie called Big Fish, which I think was based on a book. But again, that's another very fond memory film that I enjoy. Big Fish is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. And Dark Shadows, which is, again, kind of like a comedy film that it's all right.
Is it the Johnny Depp Dark Shadows?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, God, okay.
So I've never watched the whole thing, so I don't really know. I can't speak on that. So,
Okay.
So my part of with going through the director, actors, writers kind of thing, it's not like saying, oh, John Carpenter or this composer or, you know, I can appreciate that. This is a film that's just kind of been made and doesn't have a huge pedigree or anything. And, you know, I like a lot of the stars in it, but that might be because I like the film so much. I can't remember which came first. Especially like Sarah Polley, like she's not in heaps. This is probably the biggest, most well-known film that I think she's been in. William Fichtner's definitely done bigger stuff, and Timothy Olyphant has, and obviously Katie Holmes, but I don't know, Katie Holmes is take her or leave her, really. I think I like her in this movie, but not many other things. But yeah. So the basic story is that it's exceptionally 1999. It is a film that is told in 3 parts, and it's 3 separate stories that kind of do cross over in certain places. So initially there's Sarah Polley's story, Ronna, who she is about to get evicted from home because she hasn't got any money, and she takes on a shift from her mate Simon, who is also does a bit of drug dealing on the side, and these guys show up to buy some drugs from Simon, but they go through Ronna instead. So she goes on a bit of a journey to acquire drugs and sell them, and kind of things go pear-shaped, and, you know, different things ensue. At the same time, then we get Simon's story because he gives up his shift to Runner because he goes to Vegas with some friends. So his story kind of plays a lot like, I would imagine, something like what's it called? The Hangover kind of plays these days, where he and his friends go to Vegas, create a whole pile of trouble, get into some wacky situations, and have to kind of basically flee while mobsters are chasing them out of the city. And that's their story. Meanwhile, there's also then Jay Moore and Scott Wolf, who play like bad soap opera actors who they've gotten in trouble with the police, played by William Fichtner, who so they're kind of being coerced into buying some drugs from their friend Simon at the supermarket, because Simon and Runner and other characters all work at the same supermarket, and that's kind of where they connect. And the Jay Moore and Scott Wolf's characters go in to find Simon to buy some drugs, but they end up getting hooked up with Runner. And then it's their story about how they kind of try and get out from having to do this sort of thing for the police. And again, it's quite a funny story, I think, their story. But they all kind of interact in different ways and at different points throughout each other's stories. So there's a point like at the beginning of Ronna's story where she meets Jay Moore and Scott Wolf's characters, but then unknowingly, initially, she runs into them again at the end of her story. And then when you see their story, you kind of see their perspective of that same event that happens. And it's one of those kind of movies where it kind of crisscrosses and stuff, and it's very much kind of unconnected but yet interconnected characters. And that's where I think the writing can be quite clever at times, especially when you know what's happening and you've kind of watched it a couple of times, and you can pick up the different things that, okay, that's from that other story that's now coming into play with this story, and so on and so forth. So that's my very probably poor summary of the plot. But again, before I hand it over and very nervously find out what you thought of this movie, part of the reason that I love it so much, and I have watched it a million times. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've actually watched this film. But it is such a reminiscent kind of movie for me of the era. And it reminds me of the kind of things that were funny at the time and the kind of things that were exciting at the time. Or, there's one of the central plot points in the movie is a big rave that happens on like Christmas Eve or Christmas night, one of those days. And I think it's Christmas Eve. And, not to be indelicate about it or anything, but when I was young, my friends and I used to go party a lot and do different things and get up to different mischief and that sort of thing. So that kind of whole scene is very reminiscent for me as well. And even though I'm happy to have left it behind, it kind of, they did nail that kind of aspect of the film, and the writing and the filmmaking kind of really captures what it was like to be 17 at that time and getting up to those sorts of shenanigans, even down to the fact that I had, Sarah Polly's character in the car that they get around in, they've got like fairy lights all throughout the car. And in my first car, which was an old 1984 Toyota Corolla, I had fairy lights all through my car that were like plugged into the cigarette lighter. So when my friends and I were driving around at night, just doing whatever, we'd have multicolored lights kind of lighting up the inside of the car.
I love that. That's really good.
So, it's all silly things really, and not that's what I mean by it's not like technically cinematic reasons. It's mostly very personal reasons why I love this film. But I am very interested to hear what you thought of it, Matt. So lay it on me, brother.
Now, before I have to give you my crushing opinion, since you said you lived parts of this their life yourself a bit with the raves and shit, have you also ever gone into the grocery store and danced to the Macarena while eating the greenest banana I've ever seen? That scene stuck with me.
No, I have not experienced that particular element. Yeah.
That was wild. But yeah, this movie. So I didn't know anything about this beforehand. I think I've seen the poster flying around, but I've never looked into this or had any reason to personally. And when I started watching this, I thought, yeah, okay, this might become like a Clerks, but with more energy and more color. And I
Hmm.
don't just mean the actual color of the film, I mean more colorful characters.
Yeah.
That was the first impression I got. But then when it was introduced that this was this free story, almost anthology thing, this concept with the different points of views, that's when I actually got engaged and I started to see what makes this movie a bit special because I think that concept is not only very interesting, it is also pretty damn well executed here. I think I do believe Simon's story is my least favorite because it is a bit much removed from the rest. But the first and the last story, which have more intertwining elements, those made the movie for me for the most part.
Hmm.
Uh, though even Simon's story, there are 2 points in there that I do want to mention because for one, seeing Bracken Meyer of all people as like this dude bro gangster type saying the N-word was surreal. It's not at all the role I would have ever seen him in, I think. And also huge shout outs to that one girl that was told to stand naked next to the burning hotel
The curtains, yeah.
when the hotel room burns down, she's just told to stand there naked and try to put out the massive flames with a pillow, which scared the shit out of me just watching that. But yeah, even aside from that, this is clearly a movie. I was thinking watching this that this is like a breed of movie that doesn't really exist much anymore, or at least it doesn't really get theatrical releases anymore. It's like a franchise-less, brandless, character-driven dramedy, pretty much. Like you don't really see that with a big budget or whatever anymore. That's like maybe you find that on Netflix in smaller scales, but not the thing that most people seek out anymore. And so it is a little bit of a product of its time, I guess. Although I think you said similar things, like it's very much 90s, which isn't to its detriment at all. Just an interesting thing to note. And Timothy Olyphant was one of the actors that you pointed out as well. I think I've seen it in some other movies, don't really have a big attachment to him, though. I think his performance in this was my favorite. He gave off some big Michael Shannon vibes, and I don't mean that derogatory or anything.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, he had a great presence, I think. He was great.
Just to butt in on, the Timothy Olyphant thing.
Yeah.
Again, and another personal connection that kind of makes this movie great for me. His character as a drug dealer who lives in an apartment that is kind of semi-furnished. Like there's boxes all piled up against the wall, and it's a bit like he's almost squatting there a bit. I knew a guy who was exactly like that, who was a drug dealer who lived in an apartment in the city near where I live, and I've been to his house, and he had like no furniture and like VHS tapes piled high on each wall because he really liked videos, and he just reminded me so much of Timothy Olyphant's character, Todd Gaines. But I agree, his performance is really good because he's somewhat, he feels very genuine and honest, but also kind of a little bit terrifying.
Yeah, for sure. I love how much of a window into your past life this seems to be. It's great. I also want to note, not only is this probably the most drug-filled Christmas movie I've ever seen, which is dope, I also really like how this is very much a Christmas movie, as in it happens during Christmas days, those holiday days.
Yeah.
But without making it the focus or whatever. There is not even a single Christmas song until like the last half hour or something when they have dinner with the that one couple.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single Christmas song before that, and I really, really like that. There should be more movies like that.
It's like it just happens to be at Christmas.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
there are Christmassy things like you would expect, but it's not part of the story.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, I see how the personal attachment is making this a favorite for you, and I'm not on the same level. I don't
Yeah.
have that personal attachment. I still do agree, though, that this is a fun movie that has solid execution, that has some elements that are well done.
Cool. I would agree with you, actually, that, yeah, Simon's story is probably the weakest. And for the same
Yeah.
reasons of the first two, like Adam and Zach's at the end and Ronna's at the beginning, do relate a lot more. And there's so many more moments where they cross over than in Simon's story. Because Simon, like, he goes to a whole different place. So
Yeah.
there's like a couple of phone calls or something that ties them together, but that's about it. And
yeah, exactly.
the other thing I didn't mention was the soundtrack as well, which is it's not an original score. It's using pop music and stuff from the day and a lot of house tracks and stuff because there's very much a rave kind of theme to the whole thing. And even though I'm not huge into that kind of music, I think it really fit a lot of the scenes personally. I don't know about you, but
yeah, I think saying it fits is fair. It's probably, though, the element that dates it the most, the movie.
Yeah.
I think.
That's fair.
And some of the music choices, maybe consciously so, were pretty obnoxious to me. Like especially that Macarena scene that that took me out of it a bit.
So I guess again, like I remember how common hearing the freaking Macarena was.
Yeah.
So again, that just kind of worked. Like
I can see that. Yeah.
And that's where I can totally appreciate someone who's not in the niche having a different experience because, like I say, to me, all those little elements, like they just nail that particular time period. Yeah. And even though I'm not American, and so there are some Americanisms and stuff in there which I don't relate to, but just that 1999 vibe and that kind of being that age and having access to the things you do, and also being like pre-meaningful internet and pre-smartphones.
True, yeah.
Even because there are things in there like where, yeah, if they had a smartphone or if they had the internet, it would be a different story kind of thing. So
yeah, they wouldn't have to travel so much, and that's what drives the story. Yeah.
So there's things like that, and even though I was never like big into say clubbing and that kind of stuff, we used to go out to a lot of gigs and things and a lot of shows, and especially like hardcore shows and stuff with local bands, and it just nails that kind of vibe of being that age, and for me anyway, at that time, and heading out into the city kind of thing, and the kind of shenanigans you'd get into. But yeah, well, what would you rate it anyway, or what have you rated it?
My ratings are out of 10. I gave it 7 out of 10. So it's a very solid movie, like but shy of being a favorite or something.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was expecting, to be honest. No, and that's what I mean. Like, it's an interesting couple of films I think that we've got to for this first episode because, like the thing I think is definitely you can see why it's so much of a classic. But then I kind of like the fact that you were able to watch Go and kind of appreciate why I would like it, and maybe it doesn't hit the same for you, and that's fine because we're different eras and different ages.
Yeah.
But I think it is very much Go is very much a product of its time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that's probably why I love it so much. But yeah,
very fair. Yeah.
So this is where we would probably try and compare the movies together and see what kind of common threads or differences they have. But I think they're just very, very different. So I don't know if I would pick anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can obviously say both our picks have parts. We appreciate them for personal reasons. Though you have your enjoyment is tinged or like colored by personal experiences of your past life. Mine not so. I don't have like personal life experiences that lead me to the thing. I just really like these elements in storytelling. So there's a difference.
Yeah.
But still, both are personal reasons that drove us there.
But I think, and you might disagree with me on this, depending, but I think they both told their stories in an interesting way.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Your movie has the kind of unique free story structure there, and the thing has the slow, quiet.
And one thing I didn't say about the thing, which is relevant to that, like very much show don't tell. And I know that that's a common saying that people throw around all the time, but this is what I love about older movies. They love showing more than telling. And
true, yeah.
The thing, I think, spends a lot of time just letting you see what's happening rather than trying to beat you over the head explaining it, and just kind of lets you
for sure
catch up whenever you're ready.
Which also...
And I do think Go does that as well. Like, I don't think Go kind of tries to smack you over the head with its message or anything, if it has a message. But, yeah.
I'm sure there's a message somewhere in there about excess and, like, struggling in life.
Well, and that's where I think it's also very much a 90s kind of film, because there were lots of films around the time that did that kind of disjointed storytelling, out of order kind of stuff. It was very popular at the time. And, you know, with different degrees of success. But even films that weren't trying to basically make a huge point, it's more a bit slice of lifey and
exactly
interesting scenarios and characters, as opposed to you get to the end and you go, this is what it's all about, and that changed your world.
Yeah, since you're saying that, I was thinking, if I were to like try to read something from this movie about your general taste in storytelling, I would probably I would guess that you are really into character-driven, grounded stories. Like that would be something that you like a lot, maybe.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair to say.
One of the reasons why you like Go.
Yeah, I mean, not at the expense of other things.
Sure.
Like, yeah, I find it really difficult because it is very subjective for me, because of all the personal reasons why I connect with this movie so much.
Right. Yeah.
So even though I do try and like tease apart things that are purely that subjective or could perhaps be actually more grounded, it's really hard to say, because it's just, I love it way more than I think it deserves. Anyway, like, but that's cool, because, you know, that's the thing, like, it's correct for me.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, it is a 5-star film in my book out of 5, so or a 10 out of 10. But yeah. I mean, I kind of knew this already, but the thing doesn't surprise me too much from you, because from what I know, having followed your reviews on Letterboxd and stuff, is I know you do appreciate like classic cinema and technical things that are impressive, and, you know, being able to really see that in a film, I know is something that you appreciate, and you'll always highlight whenever you do review something. So in a good way, like, because I'm the same. I like that sort of stuff as well. And this is no surprise to me that you dig The Thing as much as you do, because I think it kind of ticks a lot of boxes from what I know about you anyway. As in, even the horror and the grossness of it and stuff. Like, I know you dig that kind of thing. And
hell yeah.
And yeah, it's really good. But
it sure is, yeah. Yeah.
Have you got anything else to add? You'd want to add?
I mean, I might have said this already before. Like, The Thing isn't like the most original pick for any like movie appreciation discussion, but like you said, there's a lot of personal stuff in here that I like too, even aside from the general like critical appreciation that's already out there for it. But I like that it's we both picked personal movies, but, you know, we have this variety here in like a already known classic and a genuinely personal, lesser known flick.
Yeah.
So
I think if you were in high school at the end of the 90s, you probably know what Go is, but if not, you probably don't.
yeah.
So yeah, that's not surprising to me. But for future episodes, we have a big old list of themes and ideas and things that we're essentially just going to randomly pick each time for the next time, if that makes sense.
Well said.
Like right now, at the end of this episode, Matt, you're going to pull up and spin a wheel and tell us what the theme will be for the next episode. And in the meantime, we'll watch some movies and prepare for next time. So what's it going to be?
Exactly. Yeah, we're gonna throw all these subjects on the wheel and then let fate decide what we're gonna be talking about next. That's true. At this point, I want to point out, if anybody's actually listening to this, you feel free to like send us some suggestions about movie subjects, genres, or elements that we might we can discuss in a future episode. We can throw them on this wheel as well. I'm gonna spin the wheel to see what the next episode is gonna be.
Mm-hmm.
And next time we will pick some movies about historical themes. We're gonna be talking about historical movies.
Ah, interesting.
A broad subject, but we have we have a lot to talk about what we think makes a good historical movie.
Yeah. And there's some really good ones that spring to mind. In fact, one that I was thinking about bringing today springs to mind. That would fit this.
Interesting. Well, that works out well.
And I think I'll probably pick that because it's amazing. We shall see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Awesome. So yeah, next theme will be historically themed movies.
Hell yeah.
Like Matt was saying, if anyone is watching and you want to contribute anything, please do. I think you should be able to comment pretty much wherever you find this.
They'll figure it out.
Yeah. We might have some actual contact points in the future, but
yeah.
For now, like I said, this is basically a pilot. We're just trying it out and seeing how we go. But I've enjoyed myself.
Yeah, this was good. This was a good start, I think. I like this.
But yeah, for now, if you have been listening, thank you for listening, and hopefully we might catch you again on the next one.
I hope so.